My ex-husband's wife emailed me a manifesto detailing what a terrible mom I am for asking them to watch my kids during my honeymoon, after I had done the same for them when they asked me, and told me to figure myself out. Posted by you/life_of_the_party XO. This is kind of sweaty, but my 30F ex-husband Greg, 38M, and I have two kids, Louisa, 9F, and Ted, 7M. We divorced over 5 years ago and co-parent very well. The divorce was because I was happy with our two children, but he wanted more, and even therapy didn't help. We have had basically no issues. There's no child support, we're 50-50, we've never had issues having the kids if the other parent has something come up, and we understand that it's just about making sure their lives aren't too disrupted. Greg remarried Tessie, 38F, 4 years ago, and they have another child, a boy, and another about to make their appearance in this world in a few weeks. I am marrying my fiancé Luke, 36M, in February. We've been together for about 3 years, and he's known my kids for 2. We moved in together last year. We have a group chat, but aren't overly friendly or anything, we only talk about the kids and keep it pretty lighthearted. Our only rules with other datings are that we would introduce our partners to the other before they met the kids, which went great with both of them. When Tessie and Greg married, I obviously kept the kids an extra week for their honeymoon, and again for my actual week so they could settle in. They didn't live together before they got married. When they had their first baby, I kept our kiddos for about a month, but brought them over a few times to see their new brother, obviously, so they could settle in, since it was Tessie's first baby. A few weeks ago, Tessie told me the date her C-section was scheduled for, which is in the middle of their custody week. I told her we were excited for them and of course I could keep them that week and my following week, and we could go back to normal their next custody period. She kind of hemmed and hawed and asked if we could keep them for another custody week to give them a month again to get used to things. I said that was fine, I didn't expect them to need that much time for their second baby, but C-sections are major surgeries, and I said I'd be happy to keep the kids. They don't live far from us, so bringing them over to hang out won't be too out of my way, and of course, I love having my kids with me. Anywho, we finalized our plan for our honeymoon, which is 3 weeks. I know it seems excessive, but it's something on both of our bucket lists, not something the kids would be too interested in, and the honeymoon seems like the best opportunity to do it. Basically, what would happen is we'd get married on Saturday, my week, the kids would stay with Greg that night and stay for his week, then they would keep them for our week and their next week. So they'd have them for one of my custody weeks plus one extra evening. I don't have family around, my parents died young, grandparents before them, and the aunt and uncle who helped raise me retired to New Mexico, 3-hour plane ride plus 2-hour drive at minimum. I have friends who have watched the kids before, but I didn't see a single issue with asking Greg to keep them for a week since it seems like there's a bit of precedent. I texted him the general plan and emailed him a more detailed one with locations, days, times, etc., so he could know where we were/how to contact us if there was an issue. I thought all was well and good, but they never responded until a few days later. They emailed me what Luke and I jokingly now refer to as the manifesto. It was long, rambling, repetitive, and still somehow partially written by ChatGPT. The gist of it was, what kind of mother goes on a 3-week vacation without her kids? I'm a terrible person in general for asking a young mother to have her stepkids full-time for 3 weeks while I go and enjoy myself. She kept calling Tessie a young mother, I think she means mother of young kids, and I know it's not the point, but it kept annoying me. Also, she wouldn't be alone with them, Greg would obviously be there. I'm a horrible co-parent for asking them to have the kids for 3 straight weeks while their kids are so young. Their newest baby will be 6 months old by then, by the way. Apparently it's all well and fine that Luke and I don't want any more kids. He has had a vasectomy and has known he didn't want kids of his own for a while, but we'd better not think that gives us permission to dump Louisa and Ted on them to gallivant around. I don't think I've ever gallivanted in my entire life. We needed to figure out our own weeks ourselves, this was not life or death, and it was ridiculous to ask them. I got petty after this, especially with them acting as if we are constantly dumping the kiddos on them, so I went through the last 4 years of texts and made a spreadsheet of how many times either of us has asked the other to keep the kids and the duration on an Excel sheet. While we both have made these requests, they have done so for 87 nights, 52 times, versus me 12 nights, 8 times. Obviously, this makes sense since they have a baby, and I didn't send it to them or anything, but it was good to know I'm not crazy. My friends say I should tell them that fine, I won't keep them during their custody time after their new baby comes. I'm not going to do that. I love my kids and want to see them as much as I can. But I do a lot extra for them. Just some examples, sometimes Luke if he's off work, pick the kids up every single day after school, and on Greg's custody weeks I drop them off at their house since he doesn't get off until 5, So that Tessie doesn't have to take the baby out to pick them up. Keep in mind that she does not work anymore. Our divorce decree says that whoever's week it is must drop the kids off at the other parent's house, but I've been doing all of the back and forth for a while, again, because they have a kid and because it's not that far, 5-minute drive, 20-minute walk if it's nice. I take the kids to all of their appointments, do all of the school parent stuff during the day, etc. Since I have a super flexible schedule and Greg's isn't, he would need to use PTO for all of this stuff. We usually split health insurance per the divorce decree. They're on his works insurance, but since I take them to all of their appointments, etc., I pay all of the copays. I keep a tally just in case I would end up owing him money, and I know what he pays towards the premiums, and in the past it was minimal. But our daughter unfortunately has type 1 diabetes, which has gotten pretty expensive. It wasn't killing me, but Greg mentioned how tight money was once when I was bringing it up, and I decided that it's not affecting my life. Our daughter needed it, so I've been letting it go. Their son has been in the process of being diagnosed with autism and has pretty bad meltdowns. This is all I know from Greg, so they call me pretty frequently to see if I can come and get the kids for a few hours if things are overwhelming. Of course, I love my kids and spending time with them, but I've had to cancel plans for this and they have not cared. Greg was in an accident and has been using my old car. I got a new one and hadn't sold the old one yet. It's not worth a ton or anything, for the past 7 months, with no effort to replace it. Greg travels sometimes for work, and they, Greg and the kids, have a cat over there. Normally Louisa would take care of the litter box if Greg was traveling, but since her diagnosis, and until we get her lab/health under some form of control, we both agreed that we don't want her messing with it. They let the cat go outside during the day. Since Tessie has been pregnant, she said she shouldn't have to, and Ted is a little young. He tried, failed, now he helps, lol, so I've been doing it. Anyway, these are all benefits for them that I'm going to inform them are ending. I won't go back on my word to have the kiddos after she has her C-section, but the absolute gall of them to not do the one thing that I have asked of them, and that I've done for them, has brought me to this. Most of my friends say I'm not going far enough, but a few have said that it might cause a breakdown in our co-parenting relationship, which would affect the kids. That's really the only thing I care about, so now I'm hesitant. Top/relevant comments. Commenter. You would not be the jerk. Your friends are worried if you send them this info it will be a breakdown of the co-parenting relationship, but they don't consider their entitled manifesto to be the first crack at it? Those friends are full of crap. I would send them the Excel spreadsheet and tell them to verify it. Remind them of the flexibility you've given them and that you raised small children without the benefit of a third parent. I would tell them how insulting their manifesto and lack of recognition of your efforts to make their lives easier and blend well with all the kids in mind is. The audacity it takes to shame you for taking 3 weeks for your honeymoon when you take the kids to so many things. F them. If they don't wise up, don't take the kids, stick to the custody schedule, and work something out with your friends for your weeks. Ops response. Yes, the manifesto was incredibly hurtful and came out of nowhere. We had always gotten along so well. I know money is tough on them, but Luke said the same as you. They chose to have more kids. She chose to be a stay-at-home mom, but it still feels like maybe they're jealous of the long trip. Luke's parents have offered to watch them. They aren't huge into kids but like ours and want to help us out, but I feel like it's not their job when their father will be in town. The other option would be to fly my aunt and uncle up for the week, which I know they'd like, but again, it seems ridiculous when their own father will be in town. I couldn't imagine being in town just hanging out knowing that my kids were at his parents'. Commenter. If you were my friend, and you had to use your in-laws or aunt and uncle to watch the kids, I would tell you to stop doing all the extra stuff you do. Your ex is a parent to your kids too and needs to act like it. Ops response. Thank you, I just don't want my kids negatively affected for sure, but I also don't want to be a doormat. Like, of course I'd rather pick them up if she can't get her kid in the car, because they shouldn't have to be in latchkey when they have a stay-at-home mom, stepmom, and a mom who works from home. But I think from now on, if he refuses to find them another ride and she won't do it, I'll still pick them up at least, but bring them to my house. Commenter 2. Honestly, I would send an email with a spreadsheet, pretty badass, in my opinion, and let them know that you don't appreciate their ungrateful attitude and that you are more than happy to go by the parenting agreement going forward. People want to be petty and ungrateful, and so do I lol. Ops response. I just feel like the best thing for my kids is to have a good co-parenting relationship. My friend's parents were divorced and they did not get along, and they made her childhood miserable. It's not their fault we didn't work out, and I want to do everything I can to make their lives not that much harder. But I agree I need to stop being so accommodating. It will be a horrible wake-up call, and I just don't want them to make my kids' lives worse. Commenter 3. So I hate to be the person to tell you this, hon, but what you have is not a good co-parenting relationship. What you have is two people who are running roughshod all over you and using you to make their lives easier, while skimping out on the care that your ex-husband should be providing to his children. I think the best thing to do would be to send them an email, attach the Excel sheet you have, and let them know that since they feel so strongly about sticking to the parenting schedule, and about people skimping out on care/dumping, that wording really upset me. The best thing to do moving forward is to stick to the letter of the parenting plan. It seems that's what they'd rather do starting immediately, which means the previous times you've agreed to cover in the future are no longer on the table, no matter what. If they need care for the children, your ex-husband should be responsible, because he cannot have children, remarry, have more children, and then pretend he doesn't have a duty to care for the rest of his children. Commenter 4. This is so on point. Your ex wanted a big family. Where would he have sent his kids if you had 2 more babies with him? What was his plan then? If he can't manage to attend PTAs or doctor's appointments for your kids, is he going to dump new kids' school and health responsibilities on you? No. He will take care of that, because little Miss Touch-Me-Not cannot even bother to do school pickups, so how will she manage PTAs and doctor's appointments alone? If he can't be there for those instances, why can't he be there for his kids with you? What everyone is saying is right. He is a part-time parent and you are a full-time one, even with 50-50 custody. Time to step up for yourself and for your kids. I get your sentiment of having your kids more and more. So keep them for the C-section month, but let the jerks know that it is a trade and they owe you for that. Send that Excel and cancel all the other help. Update 3 days later. Hey everyone, I don't know how to link on mobile, so my last post is in my profile. I got way too overwhelmed with the responses, but like I thought, I was completely being taken advantage of, and the friends telling me to let it go can suck it. JK, I know where they were coming from, they were just wrong, and my egg Greg and Tessie do need to be introduced to my good friend reality. One thing I didn't mention in my last post is that Greg and I have a long history. I've known him forever since we moved to his mom's neighborhood when I was 4. We were always friendly, and then we started hooking up when I was in college and I got pregnant. In his defense, he 100% stood up, married me, took care of us, paid for everything while I finished school, and even paid for my college. But even before all that, he's always been a great guy and my friend. I know it seems like I was being taken advantage of, but of course over the years people probably thought I was taking advantage of him before I started making the big bucks. It was me who filed for divorce. He said he could probably go to therapy and find a way to make it work, but I knew I couldn't ask him to do that. And there has been reciprocity in other ways. After we divorced, he definitely helped me a lot in setting up my new home, before Luke and I got together, doing things like mowing, cleaning the gutters, fixing appliances. Obviously, those things don't happen anymore, but I'm just saying it hasn't always been me doing everything. Finally, all of this has not been thankless. Up until the manifesto, they were incredibly and vocally grateful and appreciative. Doing things for appreciative people is great and makes me feel good. Unfortunately, now that we are living in the post-manifesto era, I don't get any joy from helping them out like I used to. With all that being said, I can't continue bending over backwards for him just because he was good to me before. Anyway, I got pretty mad at myself after my last post and decided to respond to the manifesto. As I was hyping myself up, though, Greg called. I was pretty amped, so I decided to answer. He started by apologizing. He didn't say it directly, but I got the gist that Tessie wrote the email in anger because of how overwhelming everything is. He reminded me that it wasn't just his son's issues, Louisa was also struggling to get her diabetes under control. Any other type 1 parents can probably relate, and she misread my email to think that I was asking them to keep the kids for 3 of my custody periods for a total of 6 weeks. Going back to the manifesto, I can kind of see where she was saying that, but it wasn't the most coherent thing to begin with. He said 1 week for our honeymoon is totally fine and they will figure it out. He acknowledged that it was entirely inappropriate and uncalled for. Unluckily for him, I was not in the best mood and told him damn straight it was one of the most deranged and untrue emails I've ever read. I asked him if anything they wrote in the email rang true to him in the cold light of day, and he admitted no. I had kind of been going back and forth on this, and was originally going to tell him to go to hell and that we would never switch custody times again. I didn't care if they had 5 more kids with C-sections. But I decided against going that far. I told him that I would get the kids when Tessie had her C-section, keep them through my custody, and would expect them to have them back during his next custody period, which still gave them 10 days to recover, etc. If he needed more help, I expected him to figure out any extra childcare for our kids, like he will need to with his other son. He started arguing, but I just bulldozed through and told him that he could make this and all the other times I've helped him out with childcare by watching the kids during my week for my honeymoon. He said that sounded fair and thanked me. But I told him that the email was so far out of line that any and all extras I'd been doing were over immediately. He could either find a new carpool, no bus, private school, or I would keep picking the kids up from school, but he or Tessie would have to get them from my home during their weeks. If they are unable to care for the children due to their son's meltdowns or their new baby, I would be willing to help them, but I warned him that due to their accusations I would start, tracking this, and if I thought it was becoming an issue, I would file for primary custody. I asked him if that would help. He could have the kids every other weekend, and I wouldn't demand child support in light of his very difficult situation, even though I know I could. He insisted that wasn't necessary, that it was on them to figure things out. He really didn't have a lot to say back to any of this and apologized again. I told him that it wasn't impossible to rebuild the trust we've had in the past, but it was going to take a lot of time and hard work on his and his wife's part because I was done putting in so much just to get attacked. He promised he understood and that he'd figure everything else out. I told him that since this was another verbal, aka not legally binding, agreement, the first time either of them slipped up, made outrageous demands, or said anything remotely close to what she wrote in that email, I would bring down the hammer, because due to the attacks on my character I now had a lawyer on retainer, hadn't met with the lawyer yet, but sometimes you need to bluff. He confirmed he understood. Tessie sent me a text apology. It seems sincere, but I don't trust her. I know Greg wouldn't throw her under the bus, but the fact that she thought it was okay to send such a demeaning and demonizing email to me after all I've done for her really ruined any grace I was willing to give her. I sent her a short acknowledgement text and went on with my day. Both their lives are about to get much more difficult. If they try to put any of that discomfort or difficulty on my kids, I will move swiftly. But also, if it means that my kids get a little less at their dad's house than they do here, that's not the worst lesson for them. Their needs will always be met, I know that. And they've been in therapy for a while, so while I'm concerned that Tessie could take her frustrations out on them, I truly think they would tell me. I read so many other stories on here and realized that two things. So the thing with the car, it's meant for my friend's stepdaughter for when she gets her permit. She is 15, and we all love her so much, but she has that disease that 15-year-olds get where she really doesn't have any motivation whatsoever. So I was talking about all this to said friend, she told her husband, and he marched upstairs and told his daughter to get dressed so she could go and take her permit test. She failed, but is going to try again next week, and he is purchasing the car next week. Greg knows he has until then to acquire a new one. And the cat isn't Tessie's cat. It was Greg's guilty divorced dad first Christmas gift, I really like the cat, she's very sweet and snuggly, and I haven't minded helping, especially since Louisa does feel bad she doesn't do it anymore. Honestly, if it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't have agreed to help. Luckily, the induction is soon and Greg won't be traveling for a while, so it's a moot point. Obviously, if they were to decide to get pregnant again, they would need to hire someone to do the litter box going forward. I've probably only done it 3 times, but I see now that was crossing some boundaries I should have put up. I'm going to keep enjoying the life that I've worked hard to build. I know they'll always be around and in my life, and it's unfortunate for them that the choices they made got them in this situation, but they're going to have to rebuild their village. I'm excited for the wedding and especially excited to go to Japan. Those things, and of course my kiddos, are my focus going forward. Peace. /relevant comments. Commenter. Does anybody else feel like Tessie just doesn't want the kids around now that she has her own? Commenter 2. Go to the step-parents subreddit and you'll see post after post from women who pull this. The minute they have the hours babies, they do their utmost to restrict when the kids can come over, when the kids can talk to their dad during mom's custody time, when the kids can sit next to their dad, or snuggle their dad, or talk to him during custody time, what activities the stepkids are included in versus the real family activities, what photos the kids can be included in. It's sinister watching these adults unapologetically scheme to weaken and sever the father-child bond because they want to know their husband picks them over the kids every time. And it's appalling that the kids' dads rarely notice or do anything. I think here it's also exacerbated by Tessie's envy over the op's life. The op is out of the baby years. She doesn't have to parent a kid through screaming autistic meltdowns 24/7 365. The op has money and time. In Tessie's mind, since the op can give all this to her kids, Tessie feels more than entitled to everything else as a way of making it fair. Op's response. Yes, I've seen some crazy stuff on those subreddits. To be honest, I found Reddit because I was Googling some of the verbiage in the manifesto, and it brought me there. I even showed some to my fiancé because I know I'm not in their shoes, and he just said they're probably all just bitter and resentful, because nobody becomes a step-parent through forces out of their own control. Commenter 3. 100% she is sabotaging your good relationship on purpose. Close the group chat and have all communication go through your ex so she can't pick fights without him knowing. She's done well to torch your goodwill with one email. Also, it's a biological thing, resource guarding to keep your offspring a lift. Ops response. Yeah, well, unfortunately for them, it's a biological thing to stop helping people when you're attacked out of nowhere.